Hi, I'm Gene Ray. I'm a 72-year-old retired master electrician, inventor, and a homemade philosopher. I have made a major scientific discovery, possibly the greatest scientific discovery of humanity. It's called nature's Timecube. It's a harmonic time cube. It's 4 days simultaneously in one rotation of Earth. Earth actually has 3 equators. We are taught that it has 1 equator. According to the drawing here, this circle represents the outer equator. You have 2 that goes across the north and south pole. Where they meet at the north pole, there's also one on the opposite side called the south pole. Where they cross the equator, you have 4 different time zones: midday, midnight, sunup, and sundown. And everything, it seems to have 4 corners. Everything created has a top, has a bottom, and it has 4 sides that operates. This could be the top of a room, at the top of the solar system, the top of the earth. This is the bottom, but these do not move. The 4 corners rotate inside, like this room. Take this room, you have 4 corners. A human can only exist in 1 corner at a time. They can only experience 1 corner. Now if this is midday, this would be midnight, this is sunup and sundown. Like midday would represent like the light rays, midnight the dark rays, sunup the Indian, and sundown the Asian. As they rotate, each corner becomes a square itself. In other words, it's like a time cube. If you put a timer inside your cube, you have a top, a bottom, and you have a front and back, left side and right side. The dimensions of a cube. If you put a timer in here, like a pulsating heart, you become a time cube traveler. We have been mistaught that the Earth only has 1 equator. Actually, it has the 3 equators, and it divides each hemisphere into 4 quadrants. Now, as it rotates, each quadrant becomes a square itself. And after you divide it into the 4 quadrants of 4 quarters or 4 corners, that's all it is. 4 is the primary number of the universe. After that, you start dividing each one of these. You can't go above 4. 4 rotates to 16. 4 divided by 4 equals 16. It's same as you have 4 big digits. Some people say you have 10 digits. You really have 4 large digits and 16 small digits. Everything is a 4/16 principle. This is the sun. And we see the 4 primary numbers, but in one rotation of the Earth around the sun, with its 4 seasons, it creates 4 simultaneous years in one rotation. We're taught 1. And you need to know even the human metamorphosis has 4 stages. It has the baby stage. The baby dies, becomes the child dies, becomes the parent, and the parent dies, becomes the grandparent. Humans do not recognize that. Humans do not recognize the stage of children. They say children are a continuum of adult, but actually only the baby is born. The child evolves from the baby. And so if without recognition of the 4 stages of the human metamorphosis, that adults do not exist. Adults are not born. They are not created. Therefore, without recognition of the metamorphosis, only the adults are extensions of the baby. Adults are nothing more than big babies. Now, this 4/16 principle also exists in the Great Pyramid. You had let me Get another sheet here. I have a picture of the Great Pyramid, and it has this indentation right here under the nose. The mother side of the corner and the father side of the corner. In a lifetime, the human goes around the four corners: the baby, the child, the parent, and grandparent. Humans do not recognize that. They do not recognize the four. Actually, if you had four grandparents, each of them had four. Each of them had four. If you're going backwards toward your ancestry, within a few hundred years, you'll have more ancestors than there are humans living on Earth. Everything is divided by four. There is no entity in the past because it's divided by grandparents and so forth. There is no entity in the future because yet divided the other way going through grandchildren. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So if there's no entity there, the mother and baby are the same age because there is no mother until the baby's born. Once the baby's born, the two parents represent the present time. The baby represents the future, which is 16 to 20 years behind. The grandparents represent the past, who are 16 to 20 years ahead. Now, what we have to do, we have to recognize the value of compare the value of the self, the family, and the community. Once a child goes into school, it is empowered as a self. And the self is empowered above the family four, and the community cube. The family, the individual or the self is not the true body, for it cannot procreate alone. The family is not the true body because it might create only offspring of a single sex. The community is the true body because it has a near equal number of both sexes of all ages, as in perpetual life. Just as the flock of birds has flown north and south for eons, the self is a cell of the family, and the family is a cell of the community. The community is the true body. We've destroyed all the communities. We have neighborhoods of strangers who, without any moral allegiance to anything except themselves. And the minute a child steps into a school, that becomes a product of under the influence of the state or the religion, and that destroys the family, and it destroys the community. We have no communities in this country today. Actually, if you get back to it, your father was actually a fish. It was like they call it a sperm. It swam upstream just like the trouts do. The salmon, it swims upstream and it fertilizes the egg laid in water. Humans originate, they come out of the water just like a frog does, evolving from a tadpole. But we don't recognize that. We use the human body, we have treated the human body as a form of God. But actually, when the human is a cube, it has a top and bottom, front and back, and two sides. A human only moves in one direction. A human can only move from corner to corner to corner to corner in a lifetime or whatever. The human cannot move four different directions. Earth moves four different directions simultaneously. It moves toward midnight, sunup, midday, and sundown. Four different directions simultaneously. And that transcends any religious powers that we have found. Another thing about religion, Jesus is a human. Here's a picture of a human. Now, if you put a human mind in a tiger, the mind has to respond to the form of the tiger. It cannot act like a human because it's not that character. If you put a God mind in a human, it has to act like a human. The human has limited abilities. If God puts himself in the form of a human, he would be limited. Now, you can see the same print of the pyramid here, the mother side and the father side. He has a top side, bottom side, left side, right side, front side, and back side. He had the form of a cube. And you can notice this book has 4 corners. Seems like everything has 4 corners. The circle rotates in. If you will cube the sphere, you will be able to understand creation. Everything, it has the values of a cube. Now, Jesus is Jewish. His father is Jewish. His heaven is Jewish. The Bible is Jewish. The government and academia, it teach the Bible. They teach in Judaism. Now, my mother, I honor my mother for my birth and my life, and she's not a Jew. I'm not a Jew. I have nothing against the Jew, but our system of a human having a divine power is erroneous, and it's actually it's a scam against children. The adults wrote the Bible, and the Bible exists against the adults and the children. The religion started back as in brainwashing and indoctrination with Santa Claus. When you connected giving gifts to the birthday of Christ, that's when the mind control started. It equates to an adult Santa Claus. It started with the brainwashing as a child, and it continued on. But God does not exist. Now, God supposedly created a first day on earth. Actually, nature creates 4 first days. So nature would be much more powerful than an individual that created only one day. In ancient times, they never knew about the time cube of the 4 simultaneous days in one rotation of Earth. Today, if you went down to a college a while back, they threatened to arrest me for coming down. They do not want to know the time cube. I went to the Pinellas County Board of Education. They said if I sent them another fax, they would arrest me. Nature's harmonic time cube is forbidden knowledge, and it is not to be known, and nobody wants to know it. I got brothers and sisters, some of the highest academic degrees in Alabama. They say we don't want to know. So there is no law that requires a person to know or honor nature's time cube. Therefore, the only thing I have is strong language. I call them stupid and evil. Educators are stupid and evil. They do not know the time cube, and they do not want to know it. I just recently returned from Georgia Tech. The students I taught with, they have already been brainwashed. They can tell you about hundreds of different gods. But if you have 2 religions, they're both wrong, because the right religion would not condone the other one. So all our religions are wrong. Christianity is adult poison forced upon the children. That's what it is, and we have to. And the religion served primarily to justify the adult plunder of the natural resources that children will need during their lifetime. But as long as we do not recognize the children, the childhood, the childhood is pre-adult. The child is the origin and the source of the adult, but we cannot teach that, and no one knows that. They don't want to know it. It's forbidden knowledge. If you recognize childhood as pre-adult, then that would debunk the God as being debunked. God is actually a post-adult cloning of the adult image, and it works against the children. It's poison used against the children. Unless we get rid of the Bible is the most deadly thing on earth, because it predicts that the earth will be destroyed, and the believers say, let's go ahead and destroy it, and it is being destroyed. Another thing, if the Christians go to a heaven, which they claim to be a much better place, would it be a crime to kill them? I mean, if you increase the advantage? There's so much to think about, but we are not allowed to think. We are controlled, starting with elementary school. First time while a child goes to a school, to a teacher, we don't know the teacher, we don't know what the teacher is teaching them, but eventually over a few years, the child is turned away from the family. You cannot control, the family cannot control the child when he's under the influence of the outside world, which is his peers and the education and government. A family has no power, no influence over the child, and so it's not the. If you start a community, you will be destroyed, because that does not follow outside influence. So if you start a community, it would be anti-government, and it cannot exist. The government cannot exist. If you had all communities in this nation, that would contradict the government, would destroy the government. Cube, it's like the community power. It's perpetual, over and over and over. But when the government comes in, the only way the government can get profit, they say, we want you to turn your resources into profit to support the government. We destroy trees, but we do not plant trees. Every human on earth should be planting more trees. Just like, is the earth better off with you? If overnight, when you go to bed, if you get up, if you find a better world, then you have improved it. But let's say if you go to bed and leave dirty dishes, in the morning you're going to inherit dirty dishes. If you clean your kitchen at night before you go to bed, you will inherit a better earth. We need to inherit a better earth every night before we go to bed. Now, what we're leaving the children by destroying all the resources, what we're doing is we're leaving them a barren earth. But nobody cares. And that's one of the things we have to get into. The Timecube requires responsibility. The adults have a Bill of Rights, but that is used to plunder the rights of children. Does the children have rights, or does the adults have the right to take everything that's from the children's future? Okay, we should change the Bill of Rights to incorporate the obligation to save a future for the children. Right now it's all Bill of Rights and we're destroying everything. Now that the forest and nature act as a reservoir of spirit, a human spirit. If you move into a farmstead and you start cutting down nature, and the humans grow in number, but when the people, the humans leave the farmstead, then the forest returns, nature returns and takes over the property again. If you kill all of nature, then you're reducing, it's almost like killing children, because the future children exist in nature. Now, here's some books. The Timecube incorporates the relativity, because everything is relative on the Timecube. Here's the theories of everything. The harmonic Timecube is what they call a TOE, T-O-E. It's a theory of everything. It's really nothing in the universe that you cannot explain through the Timecube. This is Pie in the Sky, written by John D. Barrow, and he claims to prove that all our math is wrong and all our science is wrong. So the Timecube supports his claim, and it's like this, it built from quicksand, and it will soon collapse, and the Timecube confirms that. Stephen Hawking has book. He has the Einstein mentality, but he teaches that time is an arrow, like a straight arrow. That's what most scientists do. But actually, the time is cube. It goes 4 different directions. It's perpetual, the time cube. The clockwise, people say clockwise. Actually, a clock has 4 quadrants. And all 4 quadrants move simultaneously. It's divided into 64 minutes. It gives you 4 units of 4 in a 16-minute quarter. And you can take 416 down through the atom up through the universe. You cannot do it with 3s and 5s. It has to do with the 416. Now, everything on Earth is created between the North Pole and the South Pole. Every human on Earth is created between 2 sex poles, the male and female. But we don't recognize that. Now, if you look down upon Earth above the North Pole, the Earth spins, say, into the right direction in one perspective. If you look at the Earth above the South Pole, it goes in the opposite direction, like the female perspective. So, and each hemisphere is divided into 4. So you have 4 racial perspectives: the white race, black race, Asian race, and the Indian race. And so as they keep rotating, each one of those, that's the 4 primary races, and they are subdivided into different races. Every race you have a short human, a tall human, and a wide one, a thin one, and so forth. Everything is always 4 and divided by 4. Here's a population bomb. It's kind of an old book, but it's still being shown on TV. Now, let's take, for example, if Adam and Eve created 2 people, which leads to 6 billion people, how many people, or how long will it take for 6 billion to produce? And say in 10 years, how many extra people will 10 billion people create? We have no limitation. We just keep on producing. And one day we will be so crowded there'll be no food, and you have to, people will be eating each other. If you're familiar with Deuteronomy 28:53-63, the Bible says that God says, eat your own children under siege, even the newborn baby. Now, that kind of God is not my kind of God. And another thing, if there was a flood, which I don't believe in the Bible, but in case there was a flood, all the salt water would create the land where nothing would grow. All the animals on the ark only lived by eating the other animals, same animals that's on there, and so they couldn't exist that way. And any God that destroyed all the innocent children to get rid of a few bad people, I think is a real bad God. And so I don't, according to the Timecube, one race or one God cannot exist. If you got a God for every corner of the room, 4 different gods for 4 different races, then you got to have them for 4 different stages. Yin and yang just represent 2, well, they're like 2 sexes, but they don't give the other races nor the other ages. So the yin and yang is far inferior to the Timecube measurements. The 4 corners, the midday, midnight, sunup, and sundown, if you imprint those on here, and in one rotation, each one of those will become a square itself and have its own day. In other words, the 4 corners revolve to 16 corners. of 4 simultaneous days in a single rotation of Earth. Now, people say, if you measure from one spot, it's 24 hours. But actually, if a human stood right here at this point, then that same point is somebody else. And let's say this point is midday. That same point is somebody else's midnight. It's somebody else's sunup, and it's somebody else's sundown. This is a cubed Earth sphere. Everything created has a top and bottom. You have a top of your head, you have a bottom of your feet. In between the top and bottom, you have a front side, a back side, a left side, and right side. The Earth has a top and bottom. It has the 4 corners, the front and the back. Well, the front, say, is midday, on the back would be midnight. The other 2 is sunup and sundown. You can change that to racial. If the races, if midday represents the light race, midnight the dark race, sunup the Indian race, and sundown the Asian race. As you rotate it, it gives you, each has 4 stages of the human metamorphosis, like the baby, the child, the parent, and grandparent. What people do not know, the baby dies to become the parent, becomes the child dies to become the parent, and the parent dies to become the grandparent. That are the 4 stages of human metamorphosis. We're not taught that, and they refuse to teach it because that would contradict the entity that they have created, they call God. So that, you take a globe and you put it in a room. If you put this globe in the room, both the room and the globe will have a top and bottom. Both the room will have 4 corners on the globe, but this globe rotates the 4 corners simultaneously. A human only moves 1 corner at the same time. Therefore, it has to go to corner to corner to corner. So that is another thing. At any point on the rotation of this cube, of this Earth, this sphere, any point of it travels at the same time. If you put a card table at the North Pole and draw a line from one leg of the card table down to this down to the circumference here at the equator, in one rotation around, it would take, say, 24 hours here. It would take 24 hours for that one leg of that card table to rotate. The speed and the resistance here creates heat. That's the reason we're warm. And the almost still speed, or the slow speed at the North Pole is so slow, that's the reason things get cold. Now, if you say it was close to the sun, we'll see the backside of Earth is further than the pole, but it travels much faster on the backside. So that is but the time is constant. As your distance is reduced, the speed is slowed. As you come down here, the distance is longer and the speed increases. But that's everywhere on here. It moves at the same time. Takes you 24 hours for the one leg, one corner of the card table to revolve. Now, it's what we don't recognize, there's 4 seasons on Earth. And each one of those rotate. So actually, in one rotation you have 4 to 16. You have 16 seasons in one rotation of Earth. We call it the 4 corners of the Great Pyramid. And this picture is half dark, half light. Now, in one rotation of the 4 corners, each corner rotates to 4. In other words, there's a 4/16 principle. You have, in fact, from this point in one rotation, you'll have 24 hours of daylight. From here to 24 hours of sundown. Here you have 24 hours of midnight. Here you have 24 hours of sunup. there are 96 hours accountable within one rotation of the earth, or the one rotation of the four-corner pyramid. Now, who built the Great Pyramid? I say the same spirit forces that built the oceans, the mountains, and built earth, built the Great Pyramid as a sealed capsule of perfect measure. When they first broke into it, it had no body. It had the coffer that represents the time cube. Earth has 4 simultaneous days within one rotation. Losing 3 days in each Earth rotation has retarded your mentality to stupid and education of evil. You do not have the mind or education to envision nature's time cube. People say I talk nasty or mean, but there is no law to make you examine the time cube. My brothers and sisters say they don't want to know. It requires an obligation and to the future of children. And people do not want to be obligated. They would rather ignore it. Now, they said Earth has one equator. This is one equator. A nickel has one equator. This would be 2 equators. This one is splits it and this one splits. Earth has 3. It has the horizontal and it has 2 equators to go up. And as the definition of a sphere, it has 3 dimensions. 3 dimensions would be like 3 equators: height, width, and length. Now, where these 2 vertical equators cross the horizontal equator, it creates 4 points of time. And in one rotation, each point has its own time cube, its own cube. Earth has 3, but academians say that Earth only has this single. This is like saying that the Earth was flat. It was the same mentality. The 3 equator, 4-corner Earth time rotates 96 hours as a simultaneous 4-day cube. You were taught that the Earth has only one equator, as if the Earth was flat. You were taught ignorance. Creation has 2 sex poles and 4 corner races of human. Everything on Earth is created between 2 poles. Every human was created between 2 sex poles. Now, which is proper to say my God, which is personal, selfish God, or is it our child's God, our family God, or our community God? The community is the higher power, but we speak of the self God. There would be nearly 6 billion self gods on Earth. And if the Earth stood still, it would have a midnight, sun up and sundown. That's 4 corners. People say the Earth doesn't stand still. This globe stands still, and you can have 4 corners of time. This is the equator here. This is an equator, and here's one you don't see. Now, in religion, what they have done, on the circle, the 2 equators that go this way is like the cross. This is the cross of life. And what they have done, they've taken they've removed this cross of life from the earth circle, and they created the cross of death that they put on churches. They worship death. That's what worship the cross. It's a killing tool. It's used to kill people, and that's what they worship. If they need to take the cross of death and put back in this circle, and it will become the cross of life. It will give you the 3 equators, the 4 quadrants of which everything exists, the 4 legs of a horse, the 4 corners of the pyramid, the 4 weeks of a month. Everything is divided by 4. And here's the Timecube simultaneous 4-day creation. If you see midday, it's equal to 1 here. This would be sundown, and it's equal to 2. Here's midday, and it's equal to 4. Midnight is equal to 3. As this rotates like a gearbox, each one of these rotate. And a complete rotation, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, but there are different stages. The different configurations. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be like a 4, 3, 2, 1. And they're different configurations, but you have 4 different days. Just like an automobile body, when it goes 100 miles, each wheel goes 100 miles. The Indians worship one wheel. Actually, there are 4 wheels for 4 different races. This is well for $1,000. They want to disprove 4 days in each rotation. It's impossible to disprove it. It's a pitted religious academic word as a crime against nature and enslaves children. Until word is cornered, all math is fiction. Because until you corner word, math has no proper measure to it. Now here's the 4 corners. Let's say Socrates up, Clinton's here, and let's say Einstein at this point, and Jesus at this point. In one rotation, each one would have their own day at their own spot. There'll be 4 different days. Jesus would have a separate day from Socrates. Each one of them would have 4 different days, a day of their own. Socrates would have a midday, Clinton would have a sundown, Einstein had a midnight, and Jesus had a sunup. You rotate it 1 quarter, and when you rotate it 1 quarter, then that equates to 1 day. And then Socrates had a sundown and so forth, and once you rotate it 4 different quadrants, you have 4 different days in a single rotation of Earth. Now, Greenwich time is a lie. So your midday is somebody else's midnight, somebody else's sundown, and even someone else's sunup. Do you know that time is a simultaneous 4-corner square that rotates to a 4-day time cube within 1 rotation of Earth? You are educated, stupid, and unable to know nature's 4-day time cube. Very few people realize this. Here's Greenwich time. Greenwich time is like a horse, a 4-legged horse running on 1 leg. Now this is back to where adults, the God is adult Santa Claus, and it evolves from. It starts with the Christmas when you're giving gifts to brainwash the child, and you cannot have a childhood stage. Humans do not recognize human metamorphosis. If you had a childhood stage as pre-adult, then that would debunk God. So therefore, you cannot recognize a childhood stage. No human has a right to believe wrong. Believing is 50% wrong. So if you act like religion is right, then if I said that children should kill adults for ignoring the time cube, I mean, that would only be 50% right. But should children do it because it's only 50% right? You should not act on any belief that's 50% wrong. And here's a harmonic time cube. It's like coming and going. You can see the different perspectives. Now, if you look at these are each corner here represents a day. That's each time cube. You can see the little, not time cube, the hourglass, which represents a day. They go in 4 different directions. This is each day goes in 4 different directions. But now, if you notice in the middle here of the 4, there is like a 4-bladed fan. It's kind of like the 4 poles of an electric motor. And this is what makes Earth turn, rotate. Because they go in 4 different directions. It has to do with the heat of the on the sun side of Earth and the cold on the back side of Earth. It creates the electrical energy there. And so that's to note that the 4 hourglass corner days rotate in 4 different directions, creating a 4-blade motor power that turns Earth. It's so much that academia does not even know, but they will not even allow you to know it. I said any human who claims to disprove this truth cube is an evil liar. Truth is unspeakable. It has the 4 corners, and no human can speak it. It's ineffable. It represents the square and the cube. A human cannot speak the truth. We speak fiction. It's that no genius has known math to achieve cubic wisdom. All our math is wrong. All our science is wrong. And this is, say, a picture of Earth, a clock. It has 4 blades to it. And these 4 blades, other words, they divide the quadrants. The 4 quadrants move simultaneously. And the cube, and you ask people how many corners the cube has, most of them tell you 8. But actually, it has 8 tricorners. That's what it has, 8 tricorners, which equal 24, or 6 sides with 24 corners. And that 90, and if you rotate the 24 one time, it gives you 96. 96 is a perfect number. It should replace the 100%. And if you use 96, I believe your pi 3.20 will be the perfect pi. But we have to change all our math to based on the cube math, the perfect math, which is 96. Now, I've had 38,600 hits since the first of the year, and it's starting, I believe it will go over 100,000 by the end of the year. Christianity is poison forced upon children. The children, the adults claim that God did not create children, and adults claim that there is no childhood to exist. So actually, they are saying that children do not exist, when actually children should be honored for their metamorphosis when they change from the child to the adult. They should be given an honor, but we do not even recognize them. We say some other spirit force created adults, and we really condemn the children. The adults are the worst enemy of the children. Timecube is above God. God only created a single first day. In nature, they have absolutely proof of 4 simultaneous days. And the earth is not an entity. We say it's right. It has quadrants. Now, another thing is that the sun has molten lava on the outside. Here is molten lava inside the earth. We exist, the human life exists between this molten lava and the molten lava of the sun. God is ignorant. We do not want to know. My brothers and sisters have some of the highest IQ in Alabama, and they say we do not want to know. Educators are stupid. In one rotation of Earth, there's 24 hours of midnight, there's 24 hours of midday, 24 hours of sunup, and 24 hours of sundown. Educators teach that from one point there is only one day in 24 hours. It's totally wrong, and it causes the ignorance of the family and the community cubes. Human can only see only 1/4 of each. A human has a quarter value, and during a lifetime you go through around 4 corners: the baby, the child, the parent, grandparent. There are 4 simultaneous days created within a single rotation of Earth. The teaching that Earth has only one day and one rotation is adult poison forced on little children. Adults are villains of child nature. Their love for God is hate for children. Stupidity is taught. Education curse. What we're teaching the children, we're teaching them to destroy nature for profit. And one day we'll have no more nature to destroy. We are creating a barren earth. The barren earth is what's been taught in schools. Children are taught evil. A one-day earth rotation is an insidious evil. Losing 3 days within each earth rotation retards human mentality to a level of a primitive flat earth belief. Petersburg Times refuses to inform the public of the Timecube. That indicts them evil to children. When do children die? There are no 30-year-old children living on earth, so when do they die? They should be honored at death for their sacrifice and contribution to humanity. When are adults born? There are no 10-year-old adults living on earth. So when are they born? Do adults evolve from death sacrifice of children? Absolutely they do. The child dies to evolve into the adult. And it disappears just as the moth and the tadpole of the frog. The moth and the butterfly and the tadpole of the frog. One day distorted adults dishonor children with the claim that the queer God made adults first. Queer God does not fit into a family form, nor does it fit into a community value. Love for God is the same as hate for children. We must overcome this, and we must measure. That the only thing that humans do not measure, they do not measure word. But until you corner word, there is no truth in math. You put them in the 4 corners, and you put word in one corner. It has the value of 1 corner. And so therefore it is not an entity, it's only a quarter. Has a quarter value instead of in other words, it's a fourth of, has a quarter value. And so that's the reason that you have to corner word, and same way as a God, you corner the God or you corner the self. In other words, if you're in one corner, there's 3 other corners that you cannot experience 4 corners simultaneously. You can only experience 1 corner. And when you are in 1 corner, there's a direct opposite of what you said in the other corner. And then you have the 2 middle sun up and sundown light. Those 2 corners represent going across a neutral line. And so, the other words, mostly your enemy would have the same right to say something as you do when it becomes their turn. So that about kind of wraps it up for the time being.